Then there's Joy. And I do want to keep it short because they do deserve time to talk, so I'm not going to go into her full resume. She joined the Theosophical Society in 1940. So let me ask you, where were you in 1940? I know where I was, somewhere between here and there.
Well, I came to know about Theosophy when I was a freshman at college. That was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it was through a college friend that I had met in a German class, actually. And she had just begun reading Theosophy and becoming interested in it. So when we drifted together as friends, she mentioned it. So I began reading for myself. There were many books by Annie Besant. And of course, that just gripped me. I think because Annie Besant's force and the story of her life, and I suppose because my early life had not been a particularly happy childhood, I'll put it that way. My mother had died when I was 8, and I was tossed around and various vicissitudes. And my grandmother's sister, my great aunt, and her husband adopted me legally. And actually Mills is my adopted parents' name, but it was my grandmother's sister and her husband. And I suppose out of all of that, I didn't really understand why all of this had happened. Then the ideas, of course, the very first idea, I suppose, that really hit me, broadside, was reincarnation. I expect this is true with many people, don't you? That's what really sort of grasps the heartstrings and says, well, here then is the reason for everything, if there's reincarnation. But this was in 1938, very early on. You see, one of the first lectures that I went to after that was by Mary Kay Neff, and I came to be very good friends with Mary Kay. But actually what led me to join, in point of fact, I thought, this is a society that isn't telling me what I have to believe. That really appealed to me, and they were letting me be, and that was wonderful. Sidney Cook was the president, of course, at that particular time. He had taken over, and of course there was the main building here, without the library addition, and the fourth Sunday of every month, there was an Olcott Sunday lecture. Anyway, Mr. Cook, I was here one weekend, and Mr. Cook called me into his office. And he said, Joy, how would you like to join the staff? And he said, now I don't want an answer now. I want you to think about it. But if you would like to work for the society for a time, there is an opportunity, because there are going to be some changes. And I said, I know my answer is yes. And he said, no, I don't want it. Go away and think about it. Anyway, I went back to Mr. Cook and I said, I'm coming. And I joined the staff in June of 1942. Then, of course, virtually all the men on the staff went into the armed services, of course. And so then Sidney Cook came to me and he said, Joy, you're going to have to be one of our speakers. And I said, but I don't know enough. And he said, well, continue to learn, continue to read. So I was sent on a kind of trial tour to this area, over to Michigan, Ohio, some of the lodges in Illinois. We had a lot of lodges then. I remember coming to Minneapolis, and this older member, at least seemed ancient to me, said to me after my lecture, here I was, this young thing, and he said, have you read the Secret Doctrine? I said, no. He said, it's really too difficult. And he said, well, I'm going to write Mr. Cook that you can't be on the lecture platform unless you've read the Sacred Doctrine. And I thought, well, there goes my career. That's the end of my work in the society. So I came back to headquarters and I said to Sidney Cook, did he write to you? Because he said I shouldn't be on the lecture platform. He said, "You forget that. Go ahead and read The Secret Doctrine." And so by 1943, I was on the lecture platform. By 1945, I did my first complete tour of the West Coast, became ill, and came back, and I was supposed to do no strenuous work for a time. I left the staff in 1948. I had no financial resources. Obviously, you couldn't save much. And I thought, I cannot be a burden to the society when I grow older. And if I spend all of my life here, and I will have no money, and the society will have to look after me. Now, meanwhile, I had met Clara Codd. Clara was here. She came, I think, in 46 or 47. She loved hats. We gave her a hat party here on the staff. We gave her a hat party one time. Well, on one occasion, I had to go into Chicago taking Catherine Perkins. Catherine was the head of the dining department at the time on some errand, and Clara wanted to go. So I took Clara and left her on Michigan Boulevard and said we'd pick her up at such and such a time. And so when we picked her up here, she had this hat box. She'd found this beautiful hat, this wonderful hat that she had to have. And I said, "Clara, you shouldn't have spent your money on that. You know, it was expensive, these shops on Michigan Boulevard." Well, anyway, we were all in the dining room, and here comes Clara with this beautiful hat with these exotic feathers. She didn't realize, you know, birds had been killed. So Catherine Perkins had to explain to her how these feathers happened to be on the hat, and that, you know, it really was not proper. Well, Clara was crestfallen. She was absolutely crestfallen. So nothing would do, but the next day we had to drive back to Chicago so she could return the hat. And she loved the hat. So 48, I left, went to Seattle, and so for 7 years, I was in Seattle. But I would come back during the summers.
You were teaching in Seattle.
I was teaching a high school. Loved it, of course. Very active in Seattle Lodge, of course, and lecturing all over. And we started also the West Coast conferences when I was president of the Northwest Federation. Felix Layton was president of the Northern California Federations. So you can see I was still very active,
Indeed,
along
you
with
were.
my teaching career. And finally, in 1955, Jim Perkins came out, said, "Joy, you've got to come back. I know you've done a great deal in the Northwest and you're active, but we need you at headquarters." So with some arm twisting, I resigned from teaching and came back here. So I was assistant editor of the American Theosophist. So I was the first woman to take office as national president. Went in 1965 and then was elected on my own in 1966, 1969, and 1972. I think there is no other organization that is promoting or standing for the same ideals that the Theosophical Society is standing for. There are other organizations which are similar. One can point, for example, to the Interfaith Alliance that recognizes the value of other religious cultures. But there is no other organization that is really looking seriously through its objects at studying, understanding the peoples of the different religions, the different cultures, and to recognize that the reason for understanding all of that is because we're all brothers and sisters. We're all united. We're all derived from the same ultimate reality. We look in the third object, the development of the human being. What is it to be genuinely human? Now, we talk about the powers latent in humanity. In one of our texts, the Mahatma letters, these are referred to as the deific powers, the godlike powers. We are creators in our own right. And to really understand what it means to be human, this, I think, is part of our work. So Theosophy still has very much to offer. The section sent me out to Adyar to attend the council meetings and convention. And John asked me if I would be his vice president. Now it's interesting, the international president serves 7 years, you know, as a term. The international vice president's term is 3 years. So I served 2 terms, 6 years. Meanwhile, Anne, she was then Anne Green, Anne Wiley, Anne Green, had invited me to come and take over the Crotona School of Theosophy. And I saw it as an opportunity to fulfill Annie Besant's vision for the development of a theosophical school and a training place for members of the society. Of course, there were many who assumed that I would automatically stand for international president when John Coates died. I had no desire. I knew I'd been acting president for 1 month. So I left in 1980 from Adyar and came to Crotona and took on the directorship. And of course began teaching as well as coordinating all the programs of the Crotona School. Those were 12 wonderful years. We had international students. We had a lot from America. The American section would come. We had resident programs of training. Anyway, with Virginia Hansen's death, and we had shared a home at Crotona, and so I thought, well, it's time. I've been for 12 years. I've done what I could for the Crotona School. It's time for a change. So I went back and I submitted my resignation to the Crotona Board of Trustees, and so I wrote and said, yes, I will be a candidate for national president. How have the teachings of Theosophy helped to shape and guide my life? Well, certainly that's given me a purpose in life. And working for the society has been a rich adventure. It has broadened my view. It has also deepened my understanding of what it really means to be human. It has deepened my understanding of the laws that govern the universe, natural laws, cycles, the universality of right action, and that action, every action has its consequences, what we call the law of karma, of course. The study of Theosophy has certainly given me a confidence in the future. I don't think we're going to destroy ourselves, that there are more and more people awakening to our responsibility, that we have a responsibility for the earth, and we have a responsibility for each other, to care for each other. The whole perspective that Theosophy gives us is a broadening, a widening, a deepening perspective.
And you know, Joy, the only thing we've been asked to do is to keep the link unbroken.
That's right.
Hopefully,
that's right.
Pass it on to the next generation and leave it a little better than what we found it.
That's right.
Keep the link unbroken.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That was the instruction. But the link, one has to interpret what is meant by the link, you know. If we're a brotherhood, if that's the main ideal, is the concept of that unity of brotherhood, then that is indeed the real link amongst us. We're a family, yes. And we'll squabble at times, and don't worry about the squabbling. That's part of it, part of being a family.
Yes, very true.
But you can do it kindly. You can do it gently. You can do it with love. Don't get so stuck in your own ideas. This is what it is. I think this is the main thing. But the real link is with that inner fraternity, the adept brotherhood. And keep that unbroken. As long as there is the realization that there are those great ones who exist but to help humanity. And so we can lend our hands to the few strong hands that are holding back the powers that would overcome humanity. That's the real link.
The inner work.
The inner work, the transformation that must occur within each one of us.